This is Supply House Times editor Mike Miazga here at the 2013 ASA Spring Forum in Kansas City, Missouri, joined right now by Mitch Harper of Harper & Associates. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Good to be here.
Very entertaining session here on negotiating tactics. How underrated is, just the simple skill of negotiating, throughout any kind of business?
I would say we think we're better than what we are. And because of that, I would say we highly underrate how much effectiveness we can have. And so most of us as business owners or even as managers give that full authority to someone who thinks they might be better than what they are, that doesn't understand where they are in their skill set, to the bargaining table. And so I would say it affects our bottom line much greater than we have any concept of at all.
You went over a couple of, not a couple, several different, where someone might fall in their negotiating style. Now, say the far end of the spectrum is the avoider, and you had the way off to the right, the competitor. What if you got two people like that across the table? What would your best advice be?
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to play with what skills you have. Okay? And so you have to know who you are first. If you know who you are first, you have a chance to get a strategy in place. Knowing that, now if I can identify how you negotiate, if I can do that, then I can get some tactics that might align better for me to extract value or for you to have a win-win in this situation. So identifying who I am first, number one, then identifying who you are, that gives me the opportunity to have tactics that are effective. Without that, any tactic we might use, and you just pick any one of the negotiating tactics you've ever heard, is useless. It's useless because you don't know who you're negotiating against, and you don't really know what your skill sets are or how you see it.
You talked a lot about leverage. How important is that in the midst of a negotiation?
I think without leverage, you're left to a price-only environment. In fact, you can identify very quickly if you have no leverage, if that is the end note from which you play all the time. Leverage, though, is only good to the extent that we can lever it or use it in the marketplace. So there's a difference, and we talked about it today. The difference between real and perceived is none, because perceived leverage is the only leverage that's true. So a client has to perceive you as having leverage and willing to use that leverage for it to be real. The opposite is also true. Real leverage that the client does not perceive you'll use is useless until the point that you actually lever it.
Now, for someone that didn't get a chance to come to the spring forum or hasn't had a chance to see you in person, what kind of quick Cliff Notes version advice would you give to maybe increase your negotiating skills the next time around?
It's a great question to ask is where do you start? Here's what I would not do. Let's start there first. I would never go with tactics. So everyone's heard the tactic is after you give a price, don't be the first to speak. That's a useless tactic unless you understand your skill sets and what you're trying to achieve. So with that in mind, stay away from tactics to begin with and go back to the beginning, strategy. I would always start with my strategy. How do I expect to affect this negotiation? What is my plan? And then secondly, wherever my expectations are, raise them. If I was going to give you a Cliff Notes version, that would be the two things I would say. What is your strategy? Work way more on that. And then secondly, raise those expectations continually. Those two things I think would give you more useful tools than would a tactic that I would give you. And we're going to talk about tactics tomorrow, but I think it's a more useful tool to begin with today.
Wonderful stuff. It's great talking to you.
Thanks so much, Mike.
For more on the ASA Spring Forum, read the July issue of Supply House Times.